All right, so at this point, you get to bigger and bigger elements, and it gets more and more complicated. So it's not really as useful or as convenient to draw out those orbitals at this point. So instead of, for a big thing like iron, that's really only number 26 on my periodic table, so it's not that big, right? I could do orbital notation for iron, but it'd be a lot quicker and easier for me to do a different version. So again, I'll show you what it would look like one way or the other, but iron, if I was going to do it the long way, would be, okay, draw my 1s, put in 2 electrons, 2s, 2 more electrons, 2p, my bad. Put in 6 electrons. Then we go 3s, can't. 3p. Should follow with 4s. And then I'm going to do a 3D, right? This is the first time our numbers kind of went back and forth on us. So off-bow principle says that I actually go 3p, then 4s, then I go 3D, and that's where iron is technically. Now that's two different things in one. It looks like iron is in the 4th energy level, and it is, right? Because I already hit 4s, right? But technically this first row of my D block is my 3D. It's just offset by 1, right? So it's dropped down a little bit. So even on your periodic table, if you wanted to somewhere in here in between calcium and that scandium, if you wanted to put a 3 and then a 4 next to yttrium here and then a 5 and a 6 down here, there's no such thing as a 7D. So this bottom one is 6D, 5D, 4D, 3D. And we just do what we got to do. So the numbering's a little bit off, but that's where iron is in 3D. So 3D comes after 4s, so that's why I'm at 4s, here. And then 3D, the other thing we hadn't done yet is that D sublevels have 5 orbitals. So iron is however far into there, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements in. So instead of counting all my electrons, I just count those last 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm done, right? But again, it's starting to get a little ridiculous. I have way too many arrows and orbitals and all this stuff. So usually if you have an element this big, you don't notate it that way. Instead, you just put 1s2. And when I say 1s2, I mean you use a little exponent here with a 2. That means that there's 2 electrons in that first sublevel, right? And then you'll go 2s2, because there's 2 more electrons in 2s. And then you'll go 2p6, because 6 electrons fills a p sublevel. And then it's 3s2, 3p6, 4s2. Everything's full all the way up to this point where I go to 3D. And now I just put a 6 here because, again, there are 6 electrons in that 3D. So this is making it possible for me to do a much bigger element without having to draw every single orbital and every single electron, because that's not always useful. So silver, I'm not even going to attempt to do it the orbital way, right? Because silver is way too big for that. Silver is in that next energy level down here. So this is 5 as a main number on the left, but technically this is 6D that silver's in. Or excuse me, I went backwards. It's 4D that silver's in. But if you look at our off-bow principle one more time, way over here, 4D comes after 5s, right? So I have to just go through everything. 1s, 2s, 2p, 3s, 3p, 4s, 3d, 4p, 5s. 4D is where I'm going to finish because that's where I'm at. And just do what I got to do. So I'm going to start out with 1s again, and you just follow a pattern, right? After a while, you get used to it, and you can remember what it is as well. Because there's only so many of these you can do before you halfway memorize the pattern. You just have to know that after 4s, there's definitely a 3D, this one will be full instead of 6 like iron, because it has to be full if I'm going to get all the way to silver. To enter the next sublevel, to do a 4p, I'd have to have a full D sublevel, right? So I'm going to do 4p6, 5s2, 4d is where I finish, because again, silver is in that second D sublevel, which is technically my 4d, not 5d. So the other thing I need to know is silver's 1 away from the end. I know that there's 10 electrons total in a D sublevel, so silver should need 9 electrons in that 4d, and I'm done. So this is a lot shorter than drawing all the electrons in all those orbitals, because silver's got 47 electrons. I haven't counted them up because I don't need to. I know it's got 47 electrons. As long as I didn't screw up in here and put a 4 or 5 instead of a 6 in 3p, I know that I have enough electrons, because that's the way the pattern works. So then I can do a mercury. Mercury is going to be a little weird, because although it's in D, just like silver, just like iron, it's also in 5D, which means that I have a problem over here that I had already used an F sublevel as well. So there's a long ways to mercury. So it's going to take me a little while, and it might take me more than one row of work to do this. So I just do what I have to do. I start with 1s, 2s, 2p6. Sometimes it's convenient to have something right above to work off of, because I can just basically copy everything for silver right up until this 4d9, because that needs to turn into a 4d10, because it has to be 4d10 before I can get to 5p6. And again, now I'm just going back to my off-bow principle, which I know already, but you don't, right? 5p should be followed by 6s, should be followed by 4f, should be followed by 5d. So I have to go through that pattern. Sorry, clicked on the wrong thing. So 5p6 is followed by 6s2, which is followed by my next D sublevel, which should be a 5d. Excuse me, did I just miss? Because even I haven't done this for a while. 6s is followed by 4f. I just skipped the 4f, my bad. So I need to get rid of that. So it should be 4f, and that should be 14, because there's 14 electrons in an F sublevel. That's 7 times 2. Now I have 5d, right? And 5d is supposed to be I got a little off track here. I'm going to mercury right now. So 3D, 4D, 5D is where I finish. Just got a little confused there for a second. It's easy to do that. But mercury is all the way at the end of that D sublevel, so technically this is just going to be full. So again, it can be a little confusing. You can get lost, like I just did, right? But at the end of the day, you just follow off-bow principle, right? I know where mercury is. It's in this D sublevel, and it's in the third row of that D sublevel. So I just kind of go over here. The third thing, the third D sublevel is 5D. So as long as I do 1s followed by 2s, followed by 2p, 3s, 3p, 4s, 3d, 4p, 5s, 4d, 5p, 6s, 4f, 5d, I should be doing this correctly. Right? The trouble is I couldn't see that at the same time as I was doing this. You won't have that problem, right? You can have off-bow principle right in front of you in your notes. I just got a little lost for a second because I haven't done this for a while. But you can do any element as described, right? If you have to do F sublevels full, it's 14. D sublevels full again are 10. Right? We had the P and S orbitals before, so we should already know those are 2 and 6. Right? But your last sublevel is likely not full unless it is an example like this mercury where it's the last element in that block, right? We'll save the F block ones for the next video because, again, even this takes a lot of work. So we can shortcut again. But that's enough for this video.